Hello everyone, welcome again to another video in regards to your Sage 50 2021. And this video is going to be part 2 of the payroll module that we started in the previous video. So in the last video that you have looked at or you have heard about the payroll module was mostly focused on the payroll setup. And now what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the same chapter, which is chapter 7. The one that you see on the screen, we have completed exercise 7.1, all the way to 7.7, where we set up the company module to the ready mode. Now what we will be doing is, in this video, we will be mostly focused on running the payroll, as your payroll is ready, and now you want to start running the payroll and see how the transactions are getting booked as you go along from the first day of the month till the end of the month. At the end, I'll show you as well, like how you process the T4s. We will not be processing the T4s, but I'll show you where to go and how to look for the T4 processing. And then lastly, we're going to look at some of the payroll reports that are shown up in exercise 720. So now let's get started. As I said in my last video, there are two files that are provided to you guys. One is wallpaper.exe. There's another one, wallpaper2.exe. So if you're starting the exercise 7.1, you start from wallpaper.exe. So if you want to skip the setup of the payroll module and start it from 7.8, then what you do is you start from wallpaper number 2. So I'm going to download this file. And then I'll open. I already have briefed you guys on these exercises last week. The last video. So I'm gonna skip that, and we'll simply jump into the process of the payroll. So let me just finish downloading this, and now I'm going to extract this file. I'm putting it on C drive because I already have this file on my main folder. So I'm just going to work on this from the C drive, the folder that was created by the system by default. So let's look for Sage 50 2021. So here I'm going to select an existing company. And I'll go on to Sage 2021, wallpaper 2, and open. And the session date we're going to use is January 2nd, 2025. And I have the file ready and open. So in this file, you see that the payroll is already set up and there is no history tab. That means everything up to exercise 7.7 is done. And you have the 4 employees that you were supposed to set up in first part of the chapter 7. That's already there. So if you look at the David Durant, this was the only employee that has the year-to-date numbers. So if we go back to the income, he has accrued vacation of 420. Then he also has a loan. Let's go at the top there. A year-to-date loan of $90. So this was something that I was referring to you guys. If you missed to put these numbers, it's going to give you that error message saying that this employee, the payroll module is not ready because the numbers are not matching with your GR. Okay, so these has to be done correctly. So when you start from exercise 7.7, you actually start from 7.8, and in exercise 7.8, it's going to ask you to set up a new employee, which is just got hired. So I'm just going to go into exercise 7.8. Let me open that on the screen. Again, I'm not going to be completing this entire chapter. I will be touching base on all the different scenarios that you may see during this chapter. So I'm not going to be doing the whole exercises. It is your responsibility to make sure that you complete all the exercise. So here's exercise 7.8. You're creating a new employee, which is your last name and first name, and you've given all that information that's there, and you have to enter that information the same way that you did for the other employees. So here I'm going to add a new employee. So I'm going to go here, add an employee, and I'm going to say your last name, comma, first name, and then I'll skip the street, the address. I'll just type in 123. And leave everything by default, and I'll put the same number because system will not let me go forward without the same number. So I'm going to enter the same number that's provided there, 712-336-106. The birth date is the hire date is January 2nd, 2025, but the birthday is July 8, 2005. July 8, 2005. We'll leave the gender as unknown. You don't have to, but if you want, you can. The hire date is important, so we'll put today's date. And this employee is part-time, so we'll select the part-time here. And this is not relevant now, so we'll come back to the taxes, the Ontario province, and the federal tax credit is 13,808, and so this is federal, and the provincial is 10,880, and then additional index of 1010. So that's, now if you mess up with this, obviously your taxes and all the payroll will be incorrect, so you want to make sure that these numbers in your tax calculations are done correctly. So calculate taxes, no additional taxes, leave everything as default here, calculate CBP and EI, go into the income tax, and this employee is getting paid bi-weekly. Pay period frequency is 26, and the employee hours that are given, the standard hours are, regular hours per hour is $14, which is the rate, and the hours are 40 hours, and the hours per amounts per unit, which is per hour, is $14, and the hours are 40. And then for the deductions, there is 0, but this employee is getting has part of the union, so it has to be $20 for the union's dues. Amounts per pay, and again this is a percentage. Remember when we set up the pension, we set up the pension as a percentage of the pay, so that's why if it is applicable, then you have to put the percentage of the pay amount that will show up here. WSIB and everything else will remain as it is, no changes in there, and that's it. And then if you are using the bank direct deposit, you enter the direct deposit in this information. So that's pretty much it, what you have to enter for this employee. There are phone number and all the other things that are given, so you can skip that part and save and close. Now you have this employee added right here. Now what we're going to do is, now we're going to get into the payroll transactions. Now similar to what you have for the other module, you come into the employee payroll module, you see all these tabs. So on the right hand side you see name of the employees and their gross year-to-date information, deductions, and the net pay. So if you want to inquire about any employee, you can click on this, view employee record, create a paycheck, display employees detailed report. That information is there, and if you click on the employee itself, it will take you to the employee profile if you were to make any changes. You can do the same thing by clicking here as well. You can do add, modify, or remove the employees. So I always prefer to do it from here versus coming right here. I will only come here if I wanted to add a new employee, but to modify, I'll simply click on that and make the changes that I wanted to do. Then in this particular place, you have the transactions which are used to record the payroll transactions. So I'm going to show you guys what all these are. So this particular thing is a pay checks. So if you wanted to pay every individual employee separately, you click Paycheck. Okay, I'll show you guys how this works. Is if I say that this employee worked 40 hours and you want me to pay, you want to pay, run a payroll check only for this particular employee, you come right here and create a paycheck. It will take you to this place and you select a particular employee and you will run whatever you need to do. So if you were to pay for salary, commission, vacation, you will put all that information and put the employee detail, what is the check date, what is the pay period ending date, and all that information. It will do all the calculation for you. Okay, so this particular place is only used if you're running a payroll for only one single employee. Okay, it's not an efficient way. You can use this to run your regular pays as well. So for example, you have 3 employees you want to pay, you issue individual check for every employee. You will do like 3 paychecks for individual employees. Okay, so you have to do it 3 times for one employee at a time. Okay, it does take more time, so therefore it is not something that's acceptable. I mean, you can do it, but for efficiency purposes, it makes sense to run that through Payroll Check Run. So you can do the same thing that you're doing here, but you do that under a Payroll Check Run. So with the Payroll Check Run, you should able to do more than one employees at a time. So you still do one by one, but it will give you all the employee information. You click on a particular employee, enter the information, but you will process everything in a one click. So Payroll Check Run looks like this, and obviously we'll come back to this when we actually process the transactions. So when you come right here, you see all the employees are listed. You click on a one employee, enter the information that you were entering on the other place. You can do those things here as well. Okay, so this is something that you can do if you are running multiple employees. So see here, all period. If you say, okay, well, here I'm only processing bi-weekly, you select only bi-weekly employees are selected. If I say I'm running semi-monthly, you click that only the employees that are eligible for a semi-monthly, they will show up here. So that is how this works. And if you want to pay everybody, you click all period, all employees, all periods, it will select all of them, and then you enter the information for every individual employee. Okay, so this is how this is done on a payroll check run. Then you have the last option, which is pay remittance. So now, as I mentioned that in the last class as well, you have to you're withholding taxes from employees' pay, and then you have to remit that taxes to CRA. So the way that this is happening is that you have to pay the CRA all the payroll taxes by 15th of the following month. Okay, this is the minimum requirement. If this reaches a certain threshold, then you have to do the remittance on a bi-weekly basis. And then there's another threshold. If it reaches that particular amount, then you have to pay it every week on I think after certain days of the payroll check run. So that's like, goes to that next level. Okay, so that's depending on how you do that. But for this company, we're doing it every month. So we will look at the practice of how do we remit the payroll taxes to the employee. So this is not only for payroll taxes, but all the other remittances such as the pensions, the benefit, the safety shoes, the union dues, all those are remitted through this option as well. All right, so now let's get started with doing some exercises. So what we're going to do next is, in the next exercise, we are going to be issuing checks to the employees on January 10. Okay, so on January 10, we're running a payroll on a bi-weekly employees. Okay, so in that case, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the session date to January 10, which is right here. Press OK. Give you a warning, we are okay with that. And now you're given information about the employees getting paid. So you're given 2 employees who are getting paid. It's your last name and David. I'm trying to figure out because on this screen we are not paying one employee, so maybe that employee is inactive. All right, so let's assume that we're paying a bi-weekly employees. So now we won't go with the Paycheck Run, we'll do a Payroll Check Run. So I go in a Payroll Check Run and I click on that, and it will remember the check date is January 10, the period is December 28 to January 10. It says all period. I'm going to go back and change this to 26. So with the 26, it selected 3 employees. It selected Jordan, it selected Darren, and it selected your last name. Okay, and now what we have to do is we have to enter their hours. So we start with the first employee we have is your last name worked 26 hours. Okay, so you go, so now this is how you do the payroll. You click on that employee and then that information shows up here. So now you see that this is the detail for this employee. You enter how many hours this person worked, 26. It will calculate 26 times 14 their gross salary, the gross wages, and there's nothing goes up here, and there is no loans, so therefore there's no repayment to be made as well. You go into the vacation. See, as soon as I clicked on the payroll run, actually I forgot to show you guys, it shows up a reminder that payroll loan of $30. So that means I had to remember that Darren is going to pay a loan of $30. So I'll have to remember that because I set up that as a reminder. So it will, every time I run, open the payroll check, it will remind me that Darren has to pay $30 for the loan. Okay, so but it's not relevant for this profile. So I click on vacation. I don't have to do anything. The system will automatically accrue vacation of 4%. Okay, I'm going to close this because actually when I created a profile for your last name, I did not put a percentage for a vacation. So I'm going to disregard this transaction, and this actually shows you how to change the employee profile. So I click on this particular employee, go into our income. You see that I say retain vacation, but I did not put a percentage. So I had to put a 4% here because otherwise system will not do any calculation. Now I'm going to go back to Payroll Check Run again, and you see that this message pops up again. So I close it here. I select for bi-weekly, not 26 is 26, and now click on your last name and I change this to 26 hours. Now I go on vacation. You see that now it says vacation earned. It says 4% of that shows up here. Deductions, I don't have to do anything. It's by default picks up the deductions that I set up. So say $20, and then we have taxes that's calculated automatically. Entitlements, there are not entitlements, so we have to worry about this particular part. And then now we come to David. So for David, what we're going to do is we're going to enter, start with the hours. So David's hours are given as 80 hours regular and 2 hours of overtime. And then you see there's a loan outstanding for 90, so you have to deduct. It's not 90 by default, it picks up the full amount, but it is $30 per payroll run you have to deduct. So now you see that minus 30, so that means this is what we're taking from him. So that's why it shows up as a minus. And then I'm going to vacation, it's automatically calculate 4%. Deductions, this comes by default, so you don't need to do anything. You only change this if I instruct to not deduct a particular deduction, but for now we'll select all of them. And then taxes, you don't do anything, it will calculate it automatically. And the net pay is 1188, that matches with what the information is given to me. And then this there's a note there as well. The Jordan's Curry's employee timesheet is not available this time. A check will be issued later on. So if there's a payroll that's due, you don't want to wait for Jordan because you have to pay everybody. So we'll uncheck this because we still have to pay him, but we'll pay them once we get the check, once we get the timesheet. So we'll uncheck that. And now we will check the journal entry. So report display a journal entry. It will give me a journal entry for both the employees. So there's 2 journal entries, one for David, another one will be for your last name. And then you don't need to check anything, it will be system is doing all the calculation for you. And now we click post. It gives you that message because this software use the payroll table for 2020. So just giving you a warning that this payroll may not be accurate, but that's fine. We press yes, and now we close it. Okay, so this is how you run a payroll check run. Now let's assume that I received information for what's his name, the employee that we skipped was what was this, his name was Jordan. So now Jordan's pay stub came up, and now we would want to do is we want to process his pay. So what we're going to do is we have two options. We can go into a payroll check run and only select him, such as I just unselect everybody and just leave Jordan and just enter the information. Or what I can do is I can close this and I'll just do a payroll check run. Okay, let's assume that I'm doing a payroll check run for Jordan, so it will still remember the end date from the last time he worked. It will remember the period end date and the start date, and the check date is obviously today's date. And then you enter the information that's given to you. So let's assume that the Jordan is working on commission. So he worked 60 hours, his commission was $800. So put the dollar, so note this is hours, and this is the amount, so we put the amount as 800. Okay, and that shows up right here. And then we go into vacation. We don't need to worry about it, it does the calculation automatically. Then the deductions shows up automatically as well. The taxes are calculated automatically, and then if you want you can check the journal entry, and this is my journal entry, and that only shows one entry because there's only one employee. You click post, again you get that message, press yes. Okay, this is how you process an individual employee or a payroll check run using multiple employees. Now let's assume that we're moving on, and it's January 15, and January 15 is when you're running a payroll for your semi-monthly employees. So now same process gets followed there as well. So payroll check run, and here I'm going to say is only show me the employees that are bi-weekly. System was smart enough, they already recognized that these guys are already paid, so it will unchecked even if it was all employees. But even if I select 24, it only shows up those two employees. Now these guys are on salary, so I click on Sharon. It's 82,000. That's the salary, and vacation, no need to worry about. Deductions automatically gets calculated. Taxes automatically calculated as well. And then you go into Gurjeet, and you see that 80 hours, $500 of a salary, vacation, no need to worry about, and also deductions and taxes are calculated automatically. So most likely if you're running a payroll for a salary employees, it will be just as usual, nothing will change in that case. You simply process that and click post. Okay, so in this case you click post and done. Okay, so that's done. Now we're moving on to the next payroll cycle. Okay, so this is going to be happening like, I mean, in a real world you have other transactions going at the same time. In this chapter we only focus on the payroll. So when you're doing your final exam, you may see that there are transactions that are happening, and then there's a time for you to run the payroll. You run a payroll, then you move into recording your day-to-day transactions from AP and AR. So let's assume that we're going on and running the next payroll cycle, which is happening on 24th. Okay, so now the next bi-weekly cycle, the last one was done on 10, and this one is happening on 24. Okay, so here it is. Your date has been more than one, that's fine, 1 week. And now you run a payroll check run again. In this case, you're also running it for only bi-weekly employees. Now when the bi-weekly employees, you shows up these 3 employees, and then you received a call from your manager that Jordan went on a vacation and he's not working. Okay, so in that case, you're not going to get paid anything. And then he also messaged you, the manager messaged you, Jordan was on vacation for 1 week, and he wanted to get released his total vacation pay for that 1 week. Okay, so that means that we are going to be paying vacation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip Jordan and we'll do that separately. And this time we just pay David and your last name. So let's start with David. He worked 80 hours regular, and then he worked 2 hours overtime. Okay, and then everything else remain as it is, nothing changes there. Taxes, nothing changes. Then you go into your last name, and here you worked 36 hours and nothing changes on these ones. Okay, and then you check the net amount and then you click post. So now you paid David and your last name. So now Jordan went on a vacation for 1 week. Okay, so what he's going to get paid is he's going to get paid for vacation for only 1 week, but the manager wants you to release the full vacation pay that's outstanding to him. So I'm going to click on Jordan and look at the income and see how much vacation he accrued. He accrued a vacation of $512. So you're going to pay this entire $512 of vacation pay to him. But now, because you're only paying for 1 week, what you want to do is you want to change the pay period to weekly because it's only for 1 week earning. So I'm going to change it from 26 to 52. The reason we're doing that is because when the system calculates taxes, it's always look at the gross pay and convert that using the payroll frequency to see how much is the annual income and calculate the taxes according to that. So if you want the system to correctly calculate the taxes, you always want to make sure that this matches with the amount of pay that somebody is getting with the amount of time that person worked. Okay, so in this case, this person worked only 1 week. So you want the taxes to be calculated considering that that pay was only for 1 week. So if you change this, you want to make sure that for next payroll, you come back and change it to 26 before you run the next payroll. So I'm going to change it to 56 and save and close. Now I come back here and say create a paycheck. Now select the employee, which is Jordan. Now you have to remember, if there's any hours here, you have to remove. If you don't remove, he's going to get a vacation pay and he's also going to get these pay as well. So what you were told when this person goes on vacation, the manager called you, says don't deduct any dues from his salary, and then also don't deduct the loan because the loan will be deducted from his next pay, but we don't want to deduct the loan from the vacation pay. Okay, so well, this person doesn't have a loan, so we don't have to worry about that particular part. And now there is no hours, so we don't have to worry about removing that as well. So we go to vacation and see vacation earned is 512, and now this tab is for vacation paid. So we enter the hours because it worked 1 week, so we enter 40 hours, and then we put the amount $512 as the total payout. Now he earned 512, he paid 512, and there's nothing to be owing to this employee. Deductions, there's a pension, and there's unions and medical dues. So the manager called you, says don't deduct any unions and medical dues because he was only taking vacation pay for 1 week. So we will deduct these deductions in the next payroll, but not on a vacation pay. So if I were to ask you to remove, you will remove it. If I don't ask you, you leave it empty. You leave it as whatever it is by default. And you never touch his taxes. This is done by system. Okay, so if you end up not changing the payroll frequency from 26 to 52, these taxes will not match with my calculation. So this is important. If this is the case, the employee is getting paid on an unregular basis, then you will change the payroll frequency before you process the payroll. Okay, the next part that we have is we're going to click post. Now before I click post, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my journal entry, and anytime I'm doing vacation pay, I make sure that there's no wages expense because technically you're not paying for wages. So I close it and now click post. So now you know how to run a payroll where you're paying the employee a vacation pay. Okay. So now you received a call from the manager, and the manager told you that David, who just got paid, who got a pay stub for $80, 80 hours, and the 2 hours of overtime, he should have not received the 82 hours because for one of his shift he was late by 4 hours. So the hour worked for him was 78 hours, not 80 hours plus the 2 hours. So in that case, if there's any mistake that happens on the hours, there's two-step process that you have to do. Number one, you're going to have to void the previous check that was issued and then rerun the check with the new hours. Okay, so if anything happens with the payroll, you cannot edit, because with that it could mess up your payroll taxes, it could mess up your T4s at the end as well. So my recommendation is that if there's any issue that happened with the payroll, you void. If the check has not been deposited, you take the check back, void the check, void the pay stub, and then reissue the paycheck pay stub with the new information. Okay, so this is how this is going to be done. So step number one is to reverse the payroll. Going to paycheck, find the paycheck, okay, because we need to know which paycheck we need to void. So I click on this and then reverse David, and issued on January 24th. So I select this, and now I have that payroll information. So he received a check of $1,288.96. You have the option to adjust, but we're not going to use this option. What we're going to do is we're going to reverse this paycheck. You say, are you sure? You're going to say yes, and now transaction has been reversed. Now what you're going to do is you're going to issue a new check. So I'm going to create a paycheck and select David. Okay, now in this case, now I'm going to take and change the hours to 78 hours. Okay, no overtime this time. The loan, we're going to change it to minus 30. You see that the last 30 was reversed, so that was not showing up. So now minus 30, you enter it here. You don't touch the vacation, and you don't touch this. You don't touch taxes, and then click post. Obviously you should have checked the journal entry, but I was okay because I know the changes that I made, so I'll simply click post. But it's a good practice to check the journal entry before you click post. So now we're done with the bi-weekly payroll. Now you have to remember that there was a payroll taxes that were due as well on 15th of the month. Okay, so I'm going to assume that we are still we're running a payroll for January 24th, but we are still going to have the payroll remittance to be paid to CRA on 15th of the last month. Okay, so now if you were to payroll doing a payroll taxes, it's good we use this particular remittance tab. Okay, so whenever you're paying payroll, you're paying on 15, but you're paying the taxes that were due for last month. Okay, so here to how do we do that? We click on pay remittance and you click pay remittance. Then it's going to ask you is who do you want to remit? So we have all these remittances that we are withholding. So obviously all those ones are done right here. Okay, and all of them are done on a monthly basis. So I'm not going to go through all of them. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the receiver journal. So here is a receiver journal, and then you put the check date. So in our case, we're going to do the check on 15th of the month. Okay, now what's important is the remittance date. Okay, system is not going to let me select December 31st because when we set up this company, we set up the earliest date as January 1st. So December 31st and January 1st is the same thing. Okay, so here we can do that is the remittance is for January 1st. So what this is going to do is system will automatically goes back and look at the trial balance and see how much is CPP and income tax that are due to CRA. Okay, so if I show you guys the trial balance, as of January 1st, it should have these numbers because that's where the system is picking up the numbers as well. So if I look at my EI payable, it's 512, CPP payable 497, income tax payable 2345, and that number should match with my remittance report. So 496, 497, okay, and 512, 2345. See, system remembers, it's not to remember, system will pick the numbers from these. Okay, so now we put the amount, saying is there any adjustment? We say there is no adjustment. We just click right here, it will, system will automatically remember this amount and put them there. Now references, you can do December 2024 and say payroll for December 2024. Okay, and then you can check your journal entries if you want to. There are always two entries. One is reversing these liabilities and putting in accounts payable on January 1st, because that's when I say, okay, this is due, and then we book that to accounts payable, and then this is the date because this is the check date. It will issue a check, which is credit to a bank account, and it will debit the accounts payable. And then we click post. Okay, and then the message comes up and press OK, and then you close it. Okay, so that's done. So now remember, now you receive a message from your manager saying Jordan is back on a payroll. So what you do is you change this pay to his 26, and you have to remember, because if you don't do this now, you will forget before the next payroll. So if there's anybody that you change, you get a notification this employee is back and working on a regular shift, then you change that to his regular payroll cycle. On January 31st, we are running another payroll for the salaried employees. So for that, you go into a payroll check run, and then over here, you can say I'm paying the semi-monthly employees, and these are the employees. No changes happening for these two employees. We'll leave it as default. No need to do anything to these numbers. I always go back to the tabs to make sure there's nothing that looks extraordinary that stood out. Most likely it will not. This only happens if by chance you made any mistake. So in this case, there's nothing there. So we simply click post. Obviously, there are two employees getting paid because these are the ones that are checked. And we click post. Okay, and then we're done with the payroll. Now, so this is how you process. So actually in this video, what we have covered so far is we looked at how to run the payroll for different types of employees, if it's bi-weekly and semi-monthly, and then you have to remember when the payroll is going to be due and process them accordingly. We also looked at how do we run a payroll for just a single employee, and in that option we also looked at an employee who was getting vacation pay. We also looked at if something happens to your employee's hours and you have to reverse it and then you recorrect. We have gone through that as well. And then we also looked at how to remit the payroll taxes to CRA as well. So these are the things that you may expect to see in your final exam as well as in your assignment. Now, at the end, if you were to accrue a payroll, you were given the hours somebody worked and how much is the accrual. That one you are going to be doing the accrual entry in your company modules using a journal entry. So how much is the commission and the wages that need to be accrued? You come up with that entry and record it. Okay, that's how it happens. Okay, and then you record them in a journal. So we don't need to go through that. That's a pretty straightforward thing. Now, if you were to process the T4s, okay, so we don't have the how would I say that? We don't have the luxury of running a T4s because it needs the correct data, which is the owner's name, SIN number in the system to process the T4s. Okay, but I can show you where to go for processing the T4s. If you were to process the T4s, you go into the reports, go into a payroll, and then here look at print T4 slips. Okay, and if you click right here, print T4 slips, it will take you to this place where you select the employees that you are running T4, then you put the company's actual business account, which is the payroll account, and you put the owner's SIN number, and you select the type of corporation, which is Canadian Control Corporation, and then put the person contact number, which is the accountant number, and then you press OK. Okay, and then when you press OK, it will create a T4 in a PDF format, and then you will process that. Okay, and it will save a file for the employees. It will also save a file for the employer as well. So that's when you're printing the PDFs to the printing T4s in a PDF format. Now, if you are submitting the T4s to CRA electronically, you can click on File Electronically Now. So it will ask you to log into a CRA account, and that will generate a file, and then you submit that file to CRA. So technically, all the information that you have on a PDF will be saved in that file, and it kind of have a weird format of the file, which cannot be opened on any of the computers. It can only be submitted to CRA. So this is the tab that you click on if you're generating an electronic file. Believe me or not, it saves a lot of time. So if I were to run a T4 manually, it takes almost like 10 to 15 minutes to run a T4 one employee. And with the system, if you have the system running properly and have all the information in one place, you can generate a T4s, you can create a file which can be automatically submitted to CRA as well. So I'll definitely recommend, if somebody is using the payroll system from here, do everything in the system. Okay, I'm going to click cancel because it's not going to do anything if I try it. So that was in regards to the T4s. Now in regards to the report, there are various reports that are available. So under the reports, if you go in a payroll, you can click on employee, and here you can go a detail or a summary. If I go detail and click OK, this will have the detail for employee. So each employee's pay by pay period shows up, how much is the gross salary, taxes, net pay, all that information will show up here. If I ask you the detailed employee information, this is what you need to print and give it to me. If I ask you to print a summary, then you go in and click employee and give me a summary. And then here, when you do a summary, say show only the deductions that are taxes that are currently in use. If you don't do that, it's going to have so much information which are all zero. So always check mark this. So now with this, it's only giving me the total amounts for all the employees one by one. So this is a summary because it's not going to look at every individual page, just gives me the total amount in each of the tab. So always remember what I ask you. If I ask you a detail, you give me a detail. If I ask you a summary, you give me a summary. Remittance, if you want to print the remittance report, you will do that here. And it's going to ask you for, again, for which period. I'm going to say for this period. Press OK. And that will show you the remittance report for only that period. And it will give me all the detail. Okay. Most likely I will not ask you this, but this is an important information that you want to document if you're running or in charge of doing a payroll. Timesheet, I don't think we need to do that. Print a record of employment. So it is mandatory for the employer to issue a record of employment every time employee terminates. So you can print that from the system as well. Okay. So I don't think I'm allowed to do that because I still need the payroll contact information, all those things. So we'll skip that. It's not covered in this test book as well. But that's how you click, and then it will have. But this can only be generated once you terminate an employee. So since there was no employee terminated, so it was not showing me that there's any TREs that I can, a record of employment I can issue. I think these were pretty much the reports that I feel. The only thing that I feel that I may ask you to do is the employee summary or a detail. And if I want you to give me a deductions and expenses, so I can ask you that as well. Okay, but most likely employee detail and summary are the two important things that I may ask you. I could ask you to give me journal entries, so that's definitely something that I always ask. Doesn't matter whether you're only working on one particular module. So in this case, we want to make sure that we select all the dates from beginning till the end. And show corrections, if I ask you to show corrections, if I say no correction required, then you don't check mark this. So here is show correction, and then this will have all the journal entries for all the payroll. So if I say no correction, it's going to skip that incorrect entry. It's only going to show me the one with the 78 hours. Remember, there was an employee who got paid for 80 plus 2 hours. So that is not going to show up. It's going to reverse that entry, and it will simply show me the entry with the 78 hours, which was the correct entry. So if I say no correction required, so you only show me with no correction, and then this will be the file that you will give it to me. So I think this was it from this chapter that you need to do. So at the end, what I recommend you to do is I want you to make sure you complete this chapter thoroughly, because it is an important chapter, and it is going to be covered in an assignment that's coming next week, and that's also be focused on your final exam as well. So after you complete this, I'll definitely recommend you guys to do exercise 7.1, which is carpets. Okay, and that's something that I want you guys to do by yourself, so that way it gives you good understanding that you're able to understand the chapter and we're able to apply it against the challenge exercise. Okay, so this is it from my end for this particular module, chapter 7. So I think with the two videos that you have, one for setup for the transaction, will help you to understand this module better. And then after that, you definitely want to do this chapter on your own. And obviously read the information that's given to you in this chapter. There's a reason that information is there. I cannot talk about everything, but it is there so that way you can read it and make sure you understand that. And if there's any question that you have, you're most welcome to bring it up to me in the class, and then we'll take it up there. Okay. All right. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next class. Until then, take care and have a good week. Bye.